Well, hello. Welcome back to episode 30, the big 3-0 of Valley of the Sun Sunday Scaries. I am your host, as always, Sean Nickel, coming at you from the beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Today on our podcast, we have Erik Markstrom, is a friend of mine from college who went to Australia with me, who has gone through a pretty crazy kind of path over the last couple of years. Right out of college, he moved out to Iowa, then back to Michigan for a little bit, and then actually got a brand new job in the middle of a global pandemic, and will be moving out to California in about, less than a month now. So wanted to bring him on and kind of talk the perspective of what it's like to make a move from Iowa all the way out to California. Very different, opposite things. And also, he's been a big follower since the beginning, and he always gives me a ton of feedback, and I thought it'd be kind of cool just to have him come on and just give his perspective on a few different things. I'm even more excited for down the road getting to have him on after he makes the transition and moves out to California. But without further ado, I'll let Erik come on and tell his story. Take it away. All right, welcome back. We are on episode 30 of Valley of the Sun Sunday Scaries. I have Erik Markstrom on with me. He is one of my good friends from college. We went to Australia together. He has had quite a journey in terms of where he's lived and where he's heading. Just took a new job with Rivian. He's going to be heading out to California. He's currently in Michigan. He was in Iowa for a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to you, Erik, to kind of talk about your journey after college, and we'll dive right into this thing.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for the invite. Like you said, right after college, I was out in Iowa. I was working for John Deere. I had an internship with them, and we rolled that into the supply chain rotational program they have. So I started as a forecast analyst for service parts. I was sitting in front of a screen looking at spreadsheets all day long. And my second rotation, I was able to get into the combine facility, the harvester facility, and buying electrical components for operations. So if you remember in 2014 and 2015, there was that fiscal cliff, and that changed a lot for what the farmers were allowed to buy. So there weren't too many jobs that were open right when I was finishing my rotations. Took a look and was queued up to apply at GM in their electrical team. So I started buying antennas, which doesn't sound very fun, but it was actually pretty cool. And was there for 2 years, went into the bus electrical centers and was there for another year and a half, which is when I left GM and went to finish my MBA full time. And this spring, I got my new job at Rivian. And now I'm at the low voltage electrical team with Rivian.
So I guess that's a good place to start because that's a kind of a scary career arc where like all of a sudden you think you're going to be in one field and then something crazy happens, and then you go to transition to another field, and then, for instance, a global pandemic happens, right? So what's going through your mind, as you move from GM, a very safe, very stable company, very big name, moving on to something completely different, like getting your MBA and then going into, another company?
Takes a lot of self-reflection. You gotta be comfortable with what your plan is, and comfortable with the fact that plan is going to change, and you just got to commit to it. Like you said, a lot of folks see a job with General Motors and anyone else in the big three as something that works. It's going to be there, and my decision was that while I did like working in my job, I'm still in the same type of job. I had to sit down and say, okay, well, what do I really want to be doing? And at the time, my MBA was easily the most fun I was having during the week. My classmates were incredible, and I enjoyed everything I was doing. And I said, hey, I think I just got to commit to one of the greatest things that's in my life right now and take the scary leap. Fortunately, I had a lot of friends and family that were supporting me. I was able to take care of that financially, because that's obviously a very big cost for people, any school you go to. And I was able to really dive in, defend myself pretty well in some interviews, and then got my job at Rivian. So it's mostly to do with committing to that change, committing to that plan, and just plugging away at it, which you've talked to a lot of your guests in the past about too. And I think that was absolutely correct what they've said.
Yeah. So I think that's a good place to start too, where, you talk about, and this is something where some people have it and some people don't. And that is a very strong support system, because when you are getting ready to make a decision like, hey, I'm just going to quit this, go all in on my MBA, and then focus on, life after that, it can be a little challenging if you don't have, a network of people around you that either one, believe in you, or two, support you. So if you kind of want to talk about that, maybe, what that's like to have a support system, and then maybe if you don't have a support system, what you can do to hopefully get one, if that makes sense.
So I was lucky that my parents were the kind of folks that would say, I don't think I would have done this, but I know that's different for you, and we got your back. As you can tell, I've been living in my parents' place, so they were willing to take me on. And it's not fun to turn 30 and move into your parents' place and become a student and not have a job. Really, I was helping bake bread at a Great Harvest in town, so it's a big change and it's scary. But when you latch on to the support that people give you, then that's how you make it personally, and that's how you can have the patience to keep pushing yourself for what you want to do. I of course had plenty of coworkers, other friends, relationships that they not only didn't understand it, but would kind of tell me this sounds like a bad idea, and you just say, hey, listen, I don't think getting my MBA and doing it wholeheartedly is a bad idea. And sometimes those aren't the right folks to to feel like you can lean on, and you just got to take stock of what you're going to try and use as the wind in your sails. But I was able to plow through, especially because of my parents. I owe a lot to them, not only financially, but for them to be excited for me every time I did a good interview, a good project, and to really be geeked. They were excited for me every time I did something I was proud of. So that I was lucky to have that in the first place. I know a lot of people, they are their own support system. And you and I have talked about Simon Sinek
Oh yeah.
and
Yep.
Gary Vaynerchuk. I listen to them a lot, and they have a lot of good pearls of wisdom that, sometimes you are your own support system. If you've got a great idea and you know how to make it work, listen to people that know how to help you make it work. They might not be your support system, but find people that are going to help you sharpen up. And if there are people that are doubting you, if there are haters, whatever you want to call them, don't listen to them, because you're onto something, and more often than not, you're going to be on the greener pastures, right?
I've always found it kind of weird. And I don't, maybe this is how I've always thought, and maybe it might just be a family to family thing, but why do you think it is that, you mentioned before, like, well, no one wants to move back in with their parents at 30. Like, why do you think that that's become kind of like a weird taboo thing? Like that it's like frowned upon to do, because like, think about this. You moved in with your parents for an extra year or two while you're getting an MBA. So it's not like you aren't doing anything. Like, you're literally getting an MBA, and then now you're moving to California, and, without, living with your parents, like a lot of people might not be able to accomplish something like that. You know what I mean? So why do you think it's
Mm-hmm.
become kind of like a weird taboo thing? Because I've even thought, like, if I ever had to go back home and I was going to try and do something in between jobs, I would for sure live with my parents. I wouldn't even think twice about it. But
Yeah.
I know that feels like it's taboo.
And I think it's even specific to American culture, because I've talked to some of my coworkers that moved into their parents' places, and they are a family from Mexico, or they're some of my colleagues that came in from Asia. And living with your parents is a lot of times assumed, especially some of my female colleagues have said, yeah, my parents told me don't move out until you're ready to get married. And I think our generation, especially, knowing that we have things like debt and
Just crippling student loan debt, things of that
yeah,
nature. No big deal.
yeah, and we understand finances. One of your last interviews talked about your cousin talked about financial literacy, and understanding that getting out of debt is a huge opportunity and a huge accomplishment. We understand that, and if you have parents that if you don't have toxic relationships with your
Right.
parents, then it can be really good. I was able to move in, and my dad and I we were golfing more. My mom and I would be able to sit down at some dinners as a family that we hadn't had over the past 10 years because I wasn't even in town. I think our generation is a lot more accepting of it, and other previous generations, they see it as, all right, whatever. It's not a bad thing. They have a plan. They're not being a bum on my couch. They're trying something. And even when I've met a girl and wanted to start dating, and I had to have to explain, well, can't really come over to my house for dinner tonight. My parents are here. And you think that it's going to be a little bit of an obstacle in the relationship, and they think, oh man, that would be really great. I would love to be able to live with my parents, but they're 2 hours away, so I can't really live with them. So it's becoming less taboo, and even when people say it, they feel not ashamed, but they say it carefully. And I think everyone's like, well, you seem to have your head on straight, and if you're living with your parents, it must be for a good reason, and you wouldn't live with your parents if you didn't have a good relationship with them.
Mm.
So maybe that's even a plus, that you're willing to have that kind of call it humility, to be with your parents, and that your folks love you enough to want to be around you all the time. Of course, everyone would like to have their own place someday and not have to
For
share
sure.
a thermostat or a refrigerator with their parents. But I've found great success when I first moved to Detroit. I saved my money. I was living with my parents for about 6 months, saved my money and bought my house. And I felt great about it and it was awesome. But I thought I wanted to just get out of the house. And now I've been here for over a year and it's great. And my folks and I have a great time whenever we sit down. And I think it's just a generational thing. And that might change again now that we know that debt is a huge problem for people. And our generation might say, well, I don't want my son or daughter to have to feel like they need to move in. Let's see what we can help them do so they can go do whatever they want. And if I was going to save money for a trip, maybe I throw it into a house for them if that's what they want to do. But I think we're going to become more understanding anyway. So it may just not be a problem when we're totally down for it.
So obviously the focus of this podcast is always about people going through a quarter life crisis. And I think that everyone that have had on is in that age demographic, late 20s, early 30s. And I know you've been following since the beginning as well. And so I was just kind of curious maybe what your definition of a quarter life crisis is, or maybe how you perceive it.
So actually us talking about just that is what we, a house and everything is pretty perfect. I did all the things that you should do if you think that you're having a successful career, personal life. I got a house, I was in a job, and I was just plugging away, and it worked. It was good. It was that happiness thing that really caught me, and I think because we have things like vested 401ks from companies instead of having to wait for a pension, we have almost the luxury of saying, all right, you know what? I can do this and I'm fine with this. Am I happy with this? Is this really what I want to keep doing? And my quarter life crisis was once a week when I go to class, I am the happiest that I am during the entire week. While that's really good for me, that probably shouldn't be the only time that I'm truly
that's very true.
happy, and I lucked out big time. I was able to talk to a few folks that were at Rivian, and it fit really well. And I got my job, and I'm very, very happy with this group. I've got a great boss. I got great coworkers, and it truly was me sitting down and saying, okay, I was able to do the things that you quote unquote should do. Is this really what's going to make me happy? Is this something I just got to get better at so I am happy, or do I need to pivot a little bit and go somewhere else? And especially with that MBA. Being able to dive in and wholeheartedly go after success with projects and group work and everything, I started having fun. And I didn't normally have fun in school. I enjoyed a lot of the things that came along with school, but actual class academics, that was never actually fun until I just said, okay, all I'm doing is working towards this MBA, finishing up strong and getting the value out of it that I want.
And I think that you mentioned Gary Vee earlier, and he always talks about, if you're the kind of person that, looks forward to Friday, Saturday, Sunday all week long, and you dread Monday, you're just definitely not in the right thing. And I think that for a lot of people, they hit that point where, like when I talk about the quarter life crisis and things like that, it's not like you're absolutely miserable. I think that people have that misconception. It's, hey, I have what everyone from the outside deems as a successful life. Like you have a house, you have a career where, yeah, you're not really in a bad spot necessarily. You probably enjoy what you do, but you don't enjoy it enough to not have that feeling in your stomach every time you're going to that MBA class. And it's crazy. It's hard to explain until it's happening to you. But then universally, everybody, at least in our generation, hits that late 20s, early 30s where they're like, yeah, I like my job, but I'm not fulfilled, or I don't have purpose, or I'm not enjoying every single day like I should be. And a lot of people that are older than us are just constantly like, well, that's not how you're supposed to live your life. You're not supposed to enjoy it. It's kind of how it goes almost. It's like, well, yeah, because you stayed at the same place for 35 years so you can get a pension. Like you had to, like, you were committed from the beginning. Otherwise you weren't going to have a future afterwards. Like, and I think that I've never thought about the 401k portion until you just brought it up. But that's so true, where it's like, we're no longer in the era of, if I stick around for 30 years, I'll be taken care of. Like no matter where you are, really, it's almost like, here, you're going to invest in your own 401k future. Good luck. Well, I can do that in any company anywhere. So I think that I've never thought of it until you said that. So that was really interesting.
Well, and the concept of like 9 to 5 doesn't really exist anymore. Of course, there's operations, there's people where literally you are a defined shift during the day, but the jobs that like my job 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it was it, it it's a lot more tangible. There's a start time and an end time, and then you get to go home and you don't have to be an employee anymore. You get to hang out with your family if you're able to make that work. And and I think that's a key component in our world. We have working from home, we have expectations that it's kind of ironic. Well, as long as you get your job done, I don't care when you come in. Well, of course, then people manage to just end up doing their job more during the
Mm-hmm.
day.
Yeah.
So you got to have happiness, and I think previous generations might have had that 9 to 5, and then they can turn off that switch, and they know that, well, I can't even do my job unless I'm in the office, and that doesn't start until 9 o'clock tomorrow. So there are luxuries, there are benefits to both our type of work and our parents' environment for the culture, and we just got to keep taking stock. And it's really hard to talk to someone who has one view of how they spent 35 years working
Mm,
for how this big shift in the way people are staying in touch with management, with their extended stakeholders. It's all just a big change, and it's really difficult for you to take the mentality that your parents might have, and for them to try and understand you. And that's again where it's way more beneficial to have someone that just can trust you, believes in you, and
right.
supports you, so that you can help you they can help you figure out what it is that's going to do the best for you.
All right. So next question for you is: I think that you're about to witness one of the craziest extremes of a lot of people that I've talked to. So you spent your probably right after college, you spent your prime years in rural Iowa, and now
Mhm.
you're about to move out to California. I can almost not think of two different places to live than Iowa and California. And so I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on, because obviously you haven't lived out there yet, and next time you come on,
Mhm.
you'll probably have a better idea to talk about that. But what are your thoughts heading into that transition?
I think my greatest advantage will be the greatest benefit will be to find the people that are going to make life a little easier, or get to know the area more. A big thing, I probably could have moved out a lot sooner, and I talked to my boss and I said, hey, Michigan during the summer is the best place in the world,
Oh yeah.
and California is kind of closed right now, so I'm just going to be sitting still, and I'd hate to be miserable just so that I could move sooner and totally miss the opportunity to get to know the area around my apartment, and go out and get dinner with some of my new coworkers. So, and I'm a people person, you and I know
For
that.
sure.
So that is going to be probably the greatest strength that I'll have in moving, will be finding people that I'll be able to talk to, or even if I just have a bar restaurant that I'm a regular at for a little while, so I can talk to someone and be like, hey, what should I do this weekend, knowing that I might only have one other person that's willing to go golfing with me or something like that. So I think
Yeah.
that's going to be the big thing. But I've had to push myself a lot, especially coming back to Detroit. It's a little weird. When I moved, I first went to school at Michigan Tech, nowhere near Detroit, of course. Then I went to Western, and I was old enough to go to the bars, so I would try and stay around with my friends in Kalamazoo, and I seriously never went back to Detroit. And then, of course, going to Iowa, you're never back in Detroit. So then I moved to Detroit, and I find out that Detroit is nothing like I remember it, because I didn't go anywhere other than like a 2 mile radius around my house. And I had to start asking other people, okay, well, what should I go do? And I don't normally go adventuring very much, and so I had to learn how to do that even in my own neck of the woods that I've been growing up in, because I'm a different person now that I'm here. So I got to try and remember doing that when I get down to Irvine, and ask around, like, what do you do? And maybe hiking isn't my thing, but that might be something that allows me to say, well, yeah, I don't like hiking, but I do like mountain biking.
Mm.
Maybe I'll get a mountain bike. So I'll try and figure some of that stuff out. But just putting myself out there and doing something every week or weekend to try and branch out a bit. I think that's what I'm gonna find is the most successful way to acclimate.
Yeah, so Christine and I, we for the first time, and we didn't really do this back in Detroit, but we want to do it now, especially because we might only be here for another year or two. Is we sat down and we have like a 38 like numbered bucket lists of things we want to do now in Arizona. So we've done the research of like where to go, what to do, what to see, all that stuff, like within a 4 or 5 mile radius or 4 or 5 hour radius. And so we had never thought to do something like that. But, if you go about that plan where you're asking people, like no one's going to be able to tell you better than the people that actually live in the area. Like
Yeah.
you're going to hear all the cool secrets of Irvine, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they regret that years later. Like I'm sure, like if you were to do the same thing you've been doing, which is stay within a mile or two, in Irvine, there's going to come a time 10 years down the road, you're like, oh, I wish I would have done more when I was in California. And that's the one thing I don't want to see happen when we leave Arizona, where it's like, I wish I would have done more while I was in Arizona. So That's cool that you thought about that now, because you'll be ahead of the game. Like even in Michigan, there's so many things I never did in Michigan that I wish I would have done, like, waterfalls and dunes and all these things that like you always take for granted. Like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. Like, if I were to never come back to Michigan, I never would do all those things. So we're trying to be more adventurous as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I need you to make a list for me in Southern California.
I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna do some research. I'll get it over to you. All right, so we've talked about it a couple times, but you are doing something really crazy, which is you are taking a new job in the middle of a global pandemic, one of the craziest times in either of our lifetimes. Talk a little bit to that, because I'm sure there's other people out there that are watching this or listening to this that are in a very similar boat where they've taken on a new role. Maybe it was like, I started a new job in January and then this is what happened, sort of thing. So kind of talk us through what it's been like to take on a new role, and maybe some advice for people that are going through that as well.
So you and I talked about the idea of patience for the goal, and especially when you're completely virtual, the concept of making sure that you are doing something day in and day out, whether or not it's making sure that no matter what, you're there 9 to 5, if that's your thing, if it's no matter what, I'm going to get this stuff done during the day. Making sure that you've got that thing that you've done for the day and you are consistent and you're always doing it. I've found that is what keeps me level-headed, and it puts into perspective what some of my engineers are doing for me. If I know, hey, no matter what, if this is something that he has the capability to do and he says he's going to do it, it'll be done. And I try to hold myself to that kind of standard because I know they're working really hard. So especially because I have more time during the day, since I don't have to drive an hour or something like that. Just making sure that what I have that I can be doing, I just get it done for the day. You'll feel better about it, and everyone else is going to be like, yeah, that's a person that I feel is reliable. But so that's more the personal side. When you look at the extended team, I had a friend that just took a new job as well, and he said, what do you do when you can't meet the team and you're a manager? And I said, I don't know about being a manager, though I do know how to. I feel very confident in how I organize my own teams that I work with, and every chance you get to put your face on the video call, get the camera going and let them see you. And the intimidating is not the word, but accountability and saying, wow, this person is ready to roll. They're not just sitting there in pajamas and trying to skate away with a quick call. They're ready to work, and I gotta be there too. And then they like you more for it. They think, well, this person's serious, and I got to take everything that they say seriously, or I should. So being consistent with either your work day or the work that you are completing on a regular basis, and what you're doing day in and day out is what's going to keep you level-headed. It's what's going to keep other folks believing that you're the right person for the job. And then the easiest way to get brownie points with people is to get that face going. It's a funny, simple little thing, but I think it's worked wonders for me, especially with my one-on-ones with my manager. We have a really good time, and then laughing starts becoming a little bit more prevalent in your conversations, and you actually enjoy your time with them instead of just checking in and having a status update. So those are easily the two biggest things that I've seen have worked really well for me and my team.
So super important. I mean, even life after the pandemic, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier too, where, the work from home thing might be a little bit more full time than I think a lot of people are thinking about it, because this might just be the new way of life. Like, as people start to see that you can do all of your work from home, you start to see a lot of the pros of working from home. The commute is gone. You're not sitting for 30 minutes at a time in your car. You have the flexibility to come and go throughout your day. On a business side, selfishly, like people that own businesses, they're not going to have to pay for space. They're not going to have to pay for, desk space and office space. Like there's a lot of things that might lead us to making this more full-time. So the earlier you can adopt a lot of the things that you just said, the better off your life's going to be, because it might not just be a pandemic thing. It might just be, this is how the world is for the rest of our lives thing, which is crazy.
Yeah, evolution of business for sure.
Well, I have one last question for you. Before I get to it, though, I do want to kind of give everybody the opportunity to figure out how to engage with you. So what social media platforms do you typically use the most? I'll put them at the bottom here, but, how can we engage with Erik if we have more questions?
So I don't post too much on either Instagram or Facebook. If that's how someone finds me, I'll certainly respond. LinkedIn, I certainly look up, especially if there's some folks that are going through the same stuff that I am, and they either have questions about what I've done that worked, or they're interested in Rivian. I always respond within the week for sure. So Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn are getting checked regularly.
Well, if you're going out to California, you're gonna have to get on Instagram a little bit more. Everyone out in Cali,
I gotta work on those.
You gotta work on your body, so you can start posting some shirtless photos and get ready to get out there with the Cali kids.
The filters, I got to figure out what filters I look best in. For sure.
That's the things you never thought you'd have to say about your life. I need to know what filter I look best in.
Yeah.
So I have a very last serious question for you. Not really. It's actually not serious at all. So one of the most famous things that you and I are known for is in Australia, we slept outside on a patio on like the 30th floor of a hotel. And I don't remember whose idea it was. It was probably mine, just knowing me, and you were down for anything back in Australia days. Why did we do that? It was so cold. That's what I remember. I remember it was just so cold. We're going to put a photo of it somewhere. It was so cold.
So I remember, because our groups had gone to different places for the evening. And I remember our group came back just a little bit after yours, and we had so many guys in that one big room. And I saw you on that patio, and I was like, "There's room out there." and my room is not that comfortable. I might go kick it with Sean. It's a great view to wake up to.
So it was so funny, because like you think of Australia as being super warm, and when we were in Melbourne, it was like their winter. And I was not packed accordingly for it at all. And I just remember waking up just being so cold and being like, man, what? I'm so dumb. And I roll over and I look at you. I'm like, oh, he's just as dumb as me. All right, maybe I'm not so dumb after all.
Birds of a feather, man.
Oh, so good. I reminisce about the Australia trip a lot. And so whenever you pop into my text message or whatever, I always immediately think back to that story and a few other ones that probably are a little bit more risque that we can't share on here.
Man, I'll share travel stories or that one-time stories, and I'll mention, oh yeah, it was when I was in Australia. And oh, you went to Australia? Yeah, I went scuba diving. Like, oh, that's so cool. Like, you must have had so much fun. And I always leave out the part where I was the one in the group that was like, we are not going in the water. We are all going to dive. There are things in Australia that kill you.
The worry wart. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day as you are kind of getting ready to make a massive transition in your life. And I think that you're going to be really cool to have on here in a couple more months after you've made that move. And we can talk more about just business that you've been taking on, your life making that move. Because I think a lot of people are in a very similar boat where they're preparing to make a big change in their life. And they don't have a ton of people to relate to outside of what you see on like Instagram and things like that, which might not always be the real, raw, authentic thing that's happening. And so someone like you to come back on here in a couple months and just talk about, here's what my move was like, here's what California is like, here's what my new world life is like. So I'm excited to have you on in the future, and we'll be able to chat more.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a great conversation, man. Thanks for the invite.
All right, thank you again, Erik, so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to get to speak with you. It's been a long time, and man, I'm still reminiscing about the Australia days and how much fun we had on that study abroad trip. For everybody else, I want to say thank you for the continued support. I mean, we're 30 episodes in, and I mean, I'm getting just as good engagement as I was getting in the very beginning. Some situations even better as we continue to grow the subscriber list and we continue to get the view count up. It's just been a pretty cool experience to share with each and every one of you that's kind of going through something very similar to me. But we'll wrap it up. Episode 30. Again, as always, stay safe, stay distanced, and welcome to the Valley of the Sun.